New coaches introduced: the Lane Kiffin, John Sumrall, Alex Golesh, why these hires could change the landscape of the SEC quickly, and another new head coach coming to the SEC. Locked on SEC starts right now.
You are Locked On SEC, your daily podcast on the Southeastern Conference. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, everybody? Welcome into Locked On SEC. It's great to have you guys along. I'm Chris Gordy. Thanks for making Locked On SEC your first listen every day. Shout out to our everydayers. We're free and available wherever you get your podcasts. Now part of the Locked On Podcast Network, now the #1 sports podcast network. And, of course, free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube, covering your team every day. Today's episode brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use our code LOCKEDONCollege, and get $20 off your first purchase. All right, we're going to get to the press conferences we had on Monday. But first off, we got the news Sunday evening that Kentucky was moving on from longtime head coach Mark Stoops. Well, last night, news came out that Kentucky had zeroed in on their next head coach. And first, we'll start with the odds that came out yesterday. It was, who was going to be the favorite. Will Stein was right there at the top. He was the favorite. And Oregon offensive coordinator Will Stein is going to be your next head coach at Kentucky. Stein is 36 years old, set to become the 38th head coach in Kentucky program history. He's a Louisville native, played at Trinity High School, won a state title there in 2007, played quarterback at Louisville from 2009 to 2012, spent much of his time there backing up Teddy Bridgewater, played under Steve Cragthorpe and Charlie Strong. Since then, got into coaching, first as a grad assistant at Louisville, then to Texas, and then UTSA. And since 2023, he has been the OC at Oregon. And multiple reports on him saying he mentored the likes of Bo Nix, Dylan Gabriel, Dante Moore. And according to Pete Thamel, he is expected to call Oregon's offense throughout their playoff run, and he will juggle both jobs until Oregon's season ends. For Kentucky fans, if you want to feel really old, he's basically the same age as Randall Cobb. So 36-year-old head coach going younger. And Stein has been regarded as one of the top offensive minds in all of college football. Obviously, early signing period begins tomorrow, so that's why all of these SEC teams had to work so quickly to get their new head coaches in. But that quickly, we go from all these job openings open to very quickly Florida, LSU, Auburn, Arkansas, and now Kentucky, and Ole Miss for that matter. They all get filled very, very quickly. And to that point, 3 SEC head coaches making their debut yesterday at their new schools on Monday. We saw Alex Golesh at Auburn. We saw John Sumrall at Florida. We saw Lane Kiffin introduced at LSU. And that's where we'll start. Lane Kiffin saying on Monday that he felt a different side as he was trying to get to the Oxford airport on Sunday, trying to depart for LSU. He said, I had someone say to me, could you call a cop that you know that will help you because you personally know them and you're leaving the state? And you got to call them because you're driving with your son and people are screaming at you and trying to run you off the road. I don't know what they're going to do that affects you at the airport scene, all the things being said. I understand it. It's the passion, but they're saying it about you, and you thought you did a really good job for 6 years for them. And then when I got off the plane, I saw the LSU board and the leadership there. I felt the power of this place, all the fans at the airport with their excitement and their passion. So new LSU coach Lane Kiffin speaking with the media for the first time on Monday. Also talked about the people that advised him, Pete Carroll and one Nick Saban. Kiffin several times referred to Saban as his mentor throughout this process, saying, quote, Coach Saban kind of coached at another place in this conference, so I can't really say exactly what he said. I think the world of Coach Saban, and I respect him, so there's a reason I am here. Of course, Nick Saban coached at LSU from 2000 to 2004, won that national championship there in 2003, LSU's first since 1958. And then Kiffin served as Saban's OC at Alabama from 2014 to 2016, credited with advancing Alabama's passing attack. And Lane stressed he came to LSU to try to win a national championship, so let's see if he can join the likes of Nick Saban, Ed Ogeron, and Les Miles, who all did that in the purple and the gold. But we will talk with our buddy Stephen Willis here in just a little bit to find out what's the aftermath over there in Oxford. How are those fans feeling? And Pete Golding very much becoming the head coach there. And obviously we'll hopefully hear from him later this week. Meanwhile, over at Florida, Jon Sumrall getting introduced over there. And it was funny. He really showed his personality in the press conference, said that Lane Kiffin endorsed him for the job. He said, going through the process of making decisions on jobs this time of year, Lane Kiffin and I have been going through the same thing. We talked a lot. We were both in agreement. I was the right man for this job. So he co-signed on that. Sumrall did say, Lane is a dear friend, and I have to poke a little fun at him. But Sumrall, former Kentucky linebacker, brings SEC experience, coached linebackers at Ole Miss and Kentucky before starting his head coaching career. Some of his quotes, he said, give me a chance, I'm a winner. He also said he watched the Florida State game, said he thinks Florida has good players, even joked I would have handed it to 13 Jaden Both 10 more times. But our buddy Brandon Olson of Locked On Gators, he had more thoughts on this Jon Sumrall presser.
Florida Gators head coach John Sumrall did what most head coaches do during their introductory press conferences. He won, right? He gave us some little flashy sayings, but he established what most of us already knew about him. Frankly, he's a bit of a badass, right? He's psychotic, and he loves defense. That's what we needed to know about Jon Sumrall. All of his success is going to depend on who his coordinator hires are. But for a fan base that very, very actively turned him down and turned him away and said, we weren't interested, he's Billy 2.0. The second he opened his mouth, he changed the Billy 2.0 narrative, right? What Billy Napier said when he got here was, this is going to be a long process, a long rebuild that we're going to have to work through, and it's going to take a couple years. What Jon Sumrall said was, I'm a winner. Winners win. We're going to win. Florida missed out on Lane Kiffin. They did. But they landed Jon Sumrall, who still a damn good football coach, depending on what his coordinators are going to be. But Jon Sumrall is a damn good football coach, and he answered a lot of questions that people have about him in his introductory press conference. He's a psycho. We love that. He wants an intimidating defense. We love that. And most importantly, he said, while I'm a defensive guy, we still want to light up the scoreboard on offense. That's what Jon Sumrall is bringing to the Florida Gators. That's what he's bringing to Gainesville, Florida. And the fan base that was very against him starting to come around to the fact that they did hire a good football coach, even if it wasn't the head coach they wanted. Jon Sumrall won the press conference about as much as you possibly can and is hopefully going to find some success in Gainesville.
That again, Brandon Olson. Also another SEC coach getting his career underway in the SEC. How about Alex Golesh over at Auburn? Auburn welcomed him in with a traditional Tiger Walk at the pep rally. He said, we are going to be explosive on offense. We're going to play really fast. We're going to challenge teams to every imaginable way. We're going to run the freaking ball. People around here like running the football, and I can respect it. Golesh, widely regarded as one of the sharpest offensive minds in the game, and they're ended the regular season, or Auburn ended the regular season 80th in the nation in total offense, and Golesh with a top 5 offense in many different categories at USF. He said, quote, we're going to be the most violent freaking team on the football field every single Saturday. Now, he was unclear on whether DJ Durkin was going to be retained as defensive coordinator. He said, quote, we've got a plan. We're working through the steps to execute the plan. My hope is that in the next 24 to 48 hours that things get finalized and we can have some clarity with which direction we are going. For more, here's our buddy Zach Blackerby of Locked On Auburn.
Alex Golesh's opening press conference, I think it checked a lot of the boxes that Auburn fans wanted to see. Is he focused? Does he want to be here? Yes. Does he emphasize things that maybe the previous regime didn't appear to emphasize? Yeah, at least he's saying so, which is awesome as far as details, aggressiveness. Nobody's going to work harder. And then, I think he was asked some of the trickier, tougher questions, even a kind of a gotcha question or two in there, and I think he handled that well, especially the one about DJ Durkin, which I don't think it's a gotcha question. I think it's a reasonable question that Auburn fans want to know. I thought that was well asked. And, I think he kind of danced around it. It was also coupled with Cody Burns, his thoughts on him, and that was kind of cool, him talking about Cody and how much Cody is excited to be back here. So, all in all, checks all the boxes for me. Alex Golesh, your new head football coach.
That again, Zach Blackerby of Locked On Auburn. Some other news going on around the conference. How about Josh Heupel? His name was getting thrown around, rumored for the Penn State opening. Well, Heupel telling On Three's Chris Lowe on Monday he will not be moving to Happy Valley. He said, quote, "I would not want low expectations. That's part of why I want to be here at Tennessee. We will win big." So Heupel intends to embrace those high expectations in Knoxville. He's been at Tennessee since the start of the 2021 season and obviously has turned them around. Look, they took a little bit of a slight step back, made the playoff last year, took a step back this year going 8-4. But overall, Josh Heupel's done a really, really good job there at Tennessee. So he's not leaving. He is sticking around. He will be in Knoxville one more season at least. How about over at Vanderbilt? Clark Lee making a case for Vandy to make the playoff after going 10-2. He was on the SEC Network this week, talked about their lone losses being against ranked opponents, Alabama and Texas. And he implied the committee is acting unfairly against Vanderbilt. He said, "I don't know a world that exists where this team doesn't belong in the field. I'm learning right now about all the flaws and how we determine who's in and who's out. I'm very interested against fighting any perception. I think there's a bias against Vanderbilt. I think we've been ignored early in the season. We weren't given a chance." This season, Vanderbilt had win streaks of 5 in a row, 3 in a row, 2 in a row, capped off with a very dominant win at ranked Tennessee. He said, "It took us winning our way into the conversation. All we've done is line them up and knock them down. We deserve a chance to play for a national championship." Currently, ESPN projects Vanderbilt to not make the playoff. Mark Schlabach has Vanderbilt playing Miami in the Gator Bowl, while Kyle Bonagura has Vandy playing Illinois in the ReliaQuest Bowl. Not quite as exciting as a playoff. How about over at Texas? Steve Sarkisian kind of doing the same thing. He went on the SEC Network discussing all a range of different topics. And yeah, he talked about his team and making a case to get into the playoff. He said, "Look, we played 5 top 10 ranked teams this season. Beyond that, we go 6-1 in the second half of our season, started off 3-2. Of those 7 games, 4 of those teams were ranked in the top 10. We went 3-1 in those top 10 games." And talked about beating Texas A&M, who was previously undefeated, and lost to Ohio State week 1, but played them closer than anybody else. And Sark was then asked if he would make changes to their out-of-conference scheduling moving forward if the loss to Ohio State is what keeps them out of the playoff. He said, "I think we might have to. At the end of the day, we're going to 9 conference games. We got to be mindful of the fact that we've played 5 top 10 ranked teams. The next closest team that's ranked ahead of us has played 2. There's multiple teams in front of us that have played none. At that point, if we're just staring at a record, we got to put ourselves in a better position to get a better record." And I kind of agree with them. Look, everybody just looks at the 9-3 and they say, "Oh, Texas shouldn't be in. You lost 3 games." Okay, great. But what about some of these teams that are 10-2 that didn't play anybody good? Like Texas was tested this year. They played a lot of highly ranked teams. And like we said, 3 top 10 wins. I think that needs to be weighed in the evaluation instead of just going, "Well, you went 11-1 or 10-2. You didn't play anybody of note. You didn't beat any ranked teams, but you know what? We're going to put you in." That's where the discussion needs to be had. Not all schedules are created equal. Some people play tougher schedules. I think you got to give more credit to teams that win big games. Just have to do it. All right. What is the aftermath at Ole Miss following Lane Kiffin's sudden departure? Stephen Willis of Locked On Ole Miss is going to talk to us about the start of the Pete Golding era in Oxford. That's coming your way next. Hey, but first, the holidays always feel a little bit easier when you know the perfect gift. And Omaha Steaks, they make it all too simple. Whether you're treating yourself this season or sending something memorable to your family and friends, Omaha Steaks, they deliver handcrafted perfection right to your door. And this week is the best time to jump in because their cyber sale is here and the deals are huge. If you've never tried the Omaha Steaks before, let me tell you, they are fantastic. The quality is exactly what you're hoping for. Incredibly tender steaks, rich flavor, and meals that make hosting or weeknight cooking easier. And you can save big on unforgettable gifts with Omaha Steaks. Visit omahasteaks.com right now. Get 50% off site-wide and an extra 20% off select favorites during their cyber sale. And for an additional $35 off, use our promo code COLLEGE at checkout. That's omahasteaks.com. Promo code COLLEGE. Terms apply. See their website for details. Right along here, Locked On SEC. I'm representing Jon Sumrall today, the Florida hire. Shout out to Lane. I just like the color and the logo. But anyway, Stephen Willis, host of Locked On Ole Miss, joins us here. And Stephen, quite a last couple of days it has been. I got to think I mean, you had to we were getting tired of what's Lane Kiffin going to do shows. So you got to be happy that's finally over and kind of have, at least a formal idea of how this thing is moving forward now.
Yeah, it's one of those things. For the last 6 years, I've been on the roller coaster that never ended. I mean, it just kept going and kept going and kept going, and it finally stopped. And I was telling you off air that it just kind of felt like you could excel a little bit. It was one of those things that's like, hey, we made it through it. Let's deal with what was going on at that particular moment. And I'm thrilled by Pete Golding. I think that's a fantastic hire for Ole Miss. The team loves him. Somebody put out some video from his announcement. The team erupted with what's going on. They had essentially revolted against Lane Kiffin over the previous 2 weeks because of all of the nonsense that was going on. Will he, won't he, and all that stuff. And with, I guess, tonight, PFF, tonight being Monday, is the actual deadline for staffs that are going down to LSU. They have to let Lane know what's going on. Monday was an interesting day. And at that point, you're getting ready for a playoff game and a nuts atmosphere. And the whole fan base is excited right now. And they can actually focus on that football game and being 11-1, which is something that Ole Miss fans haven't been able to do for like the last 4 weeks. And that's a shame that they're 11-1 and that kind of got taken away in a way.
Did you think, and it's all said and done, so it is what it is. Did you think at all, or would you have entertained at all the idea of finding a path that allows Lane to at least finish the season?
No, if Lane took the job at LSU, he's gone at that point. If you work at UPS and you take the FedEx job and you say, hey, I just want to stay a month longer, they're going to escort you out of the building. I mean, that's just standard operating procedure. I don't know why that storyline got as much traction as it did. But the reality of this situation is, if Lane Kiffin wanted to coach Ole Miss's football team, there was exactly one way for that to happen through the playoff. If you wanted to go to LSU, there was one way for that to happen as well. Trying to have both is what delayed and prolonged this whole thing. In my opinion, this was over and Lane Kiffin was going to LSU 3 or 4 weeks ago. But this notion of Ole Miss kept winning is like, holy cow, we're going to make the playoffs. This was supposed to be a rebuilding year. How do I get to coach those games? And it became a have your cake and eat it too type situation.
Is Ole Miss, just kind of trying to ask this objectively, wouldn't you agree Ole Miss's best chance to have had success in this playoff was with keeping Lane Kiffin? Like,
probably.
In other words, their chances to win now are slightened by letting him go. That's why I'm just saying, like,
if the last 4 weeks hadn't happened, like if this was the Oklahoma week and it never happened, Ole Miss's best shot to probably perform well in the playoff was with Lane Kiffin. The stuff that happened after that, the emotional terrorism that was inflicted on the fan base to where you sell out the stadium and have a raucous atmosphere against Florida, and the first thing he says, well, you should have been here last week and looked at the crowd for the Citadel. Stuff like that, you couldn't enjoy anything. And it got to the point where it was so toxic by the Egg Bowl, which I'm glad Trinidad Chambliss and those guys were able to perform and win that game, because before that game, they wanted a coaching change to happen. Put the interim in, let's do whatever. They were essentially revolting over what was going on at that point. And at this point, going into the meeting yesterday and before this weekend, heck, go Saturday, right after the Egg Bowl, whenever the will he, won't he comes in, I do not know if there was a better chance that Ole Miss could win that game and do as well in the playoffs, because he had lost the team at that point. And I think that's important to note. Like one of the Ole Miss players on a practice field was running by and made a play, and it's like, hey, you're not wearing purple. I mean, stuff like that was going on the practice field, and it become kind of a toxic environment. And so I don't know at the end if he would have helped being there, if that makes sense.
If they were somehow, it seems to me the pressure though was on Ole Miss saying, if you're staying here, you have to sign this extension with us. Like, because somebody asked me, is there a world where Lane and LSU could have just kept this on the down low? Because LSU said they were willing to wait for him for the end of the playoff. They're like, we'll take him in January, whenever he can get here. Is there a world where they could have kept this under wraps? Lane could have just continued coaching Ole Miss, said, look, I'm not leaving. but it sounds like Ole Miss put the pressure on him saying, then if you're not leaving, sign this extension. Like, in other words, is there a world where they could have just kept going, they win a national championship, and then the next day he announces, I'm going to LSU?
Well, it's important to realize who you're dealing with here. The Tommy Tuberville situation happened at Ole Miss. So everybody's antenna and everybody's nervousness is going to be turned up to 11, essentially, of what's going on. And I can't prove this is what happened. I can't prove this was the plan. But in my heart of hearts, I think Lane Kiffin wanted to keep this under wraps. And then 4 days before the playoff game, come out that he's going to LSU, to where it's too late to change that. And that game turns into a 4-hour infomercial for LSU. And this is what Tommy Tuberville did to Ole Miss on steroids. So Keith Carter kind of finding out the intentions possibly of where this could be going and starting to inflict pressure. Keith Carter's a hero in this situation to Ole Miss fans. Because if that happened, if the biggest game in your history turned into an LSU recruiting commercial for 4 hours, there is not words for how bad that would have been. It would have made yesterday look like Mickey Mouse Club.
But if he wins, that trophy stays in Oxford. That's an Ole Miss national championship. It doesn't matter where Lane goes, right?
It doesn't matter. The only team that can benefit off of Ole Miss playing a playoff game is Ole Miss, not the team that you play every year, which, by the way, that Ole Miss LSU game in Oxford, just announced game day now and everything, because that thing is going to be nuts. But
you get what I'm saying? Like, if Lane wins,
I understand it. I completely understand it. But Ole Miss isn't going to let LSU take one bit of credit for this game, period. It's not going to happen, because people like to compare, well, Jon Sumrall is going to coach through the playoffs and go to Florida. And it's like, are you really comparing a division rival that plays a trophy game against a team to Tulane? Is that what we're doing? Is that how you're choosing to disrespect Ole Miss? This is the 5th or 6th ranked team in the country. This is a team that is one missed tackle on a 4th and 2 away from potentially being undefeated. And they're not only having to defend against what was coming on, but they have to play offense a little bit as well, or else this could have been really bad. Because as this comes out, like the whole Lane Kiffin putting the ultimatum on the coaches and all of that stuff, saying that you either let me coach the playoffs or I will take all your coaches and players, and putting an ultimatum then on Ole Miss, you could not allow that man, the man that was willing to do that and say it out loud, to have free access of your building for 30 days. You couldn't.
I just worry, Stephen, what if Ole Miss never gets back to the spot again? Like, what if this was your best chance to win a national championship?
Then Lane Kiffin ruined it. Period.
He wanted to coach, though. He wanted to coach.
No,
I mean,
yeah, I'm sure he did. I want to date Sydney Sweeney. Definitely, it's all of that. But the choice was be the Ole Miss coach and coach to the end of the season, or take another job in the middle of that season and become their coach. Their coach is not going to be your coach. And there just wasn't a world where he was going to be allowed to coach that game. And he knew that. That's the reason all of this craziness happened, because he knew that. He was just trying to, well, what if I take the job at LSU and I coach the playoffs? Well, of course he wanted that, but that isn't the way it works. I mean, as we tell 10-year-olds all the time, life isn't fair.
But even as of Saturday, he hadn't accepted the job at LSU yet. So that's where I just, like, again, we kind of get into
he hadn't publicly accepted the job. In my opinion, I think he had been gone since about the Oklahoma or South Carolina game. I think at that point the decision was made and he was just trying to play out the string.
Gotcha. Hey guys, we've been talking about this all week with the World Cup coming back to North America for the first time since 1994, and our friends at Game Time, they've got your ticket in. They are the Game Time app. It is clutch, finally giving fans a real advantage when it comes to snagging seats. With Game Time, you can track price drops in real time, get alerts when great seats open, and buy tickets the moment they hit the app. It puts the power back in your hands, and it makes going to the World Cup realistic instead of impossible. I've been telling you guys, look, if you're an Alabama fan or a Georgia fan, you're heading to Atlanta this weekend, you want to go to the big game there, Game Time, they got tickets for that game right there. And look, look, maybe you want to just go to Atlanta and keep checking ticket prices and see if they go down, see if they fluctuate. Use the Game Time app and do it. You pick a game, tap a section. You can have your tickets loaded in within minutes. No confusion, no hunting for the fine print. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets, whether it's for the World Cup or the SEC title game. Every match, concert, or event with the Game Time app. You download the Game Time app, create an account, use our code LOCKEDONCollege, get $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, download the app, make an account, and use our code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go with Game Time. We're continuing our conversation with Stephen Willis, host of Locked On Ole Miss. So the Pete Golding era gets underway in Oxford. I've seen a lot of Ole Miss fans are super excited, and I've compared it, Stephen. This is very much reminds me of what happened with Notre Dame when Brian Kelly left. It came out that Brian Kelly was going to LSU, and Marcus Freeman was coming with him to be his DC. And the higher-ups at Notre Dame said, "Whoa, pump the brakes. Marcus, you're the head coach now." And Marcus went, "Wait a minute. I'm not going to be the DC at LSU. I'm going to be the head coach at Notre Dame." He said, "All right, deal." And they looked around the room. They said, "Everybody in here, we'll pay you double your salary if you stay." And everybody kind of looked around and went, "All right, well, we'll do this." And it was a ballsy move. I questioned, I'm like, I don't know if this is going to work for Notre Dame. And it's worked. Marcus Freeman took Notre Dame to the national championship last year. So kind of same thing happens here. Here a week ago that it sounds like Pete Golding's going to follow Lane Kiffin to LSU, go be his DC. He's from Hammond, Louisiana, an hour up the road from Baton Rouge. It's like, this makes a lot of sense. And suddenly Ole Miss does the pivot. No, you're going to be the head coach, and everybody who stays, you're all going to get raises. So my only question about it, Stephen, is this a move best made for the next 4 to 5 years for Ole Miss versus we think right now for the next 6 months to a year, this is a great move. But is this the best move long-term for Ole Miss?
I think it is, honestly, when you look at it. One question that I had is there was rumors floating around before the season that he didn't want to be a head coach. He just wanted to be a defensive coordinator. I'm not sure where that came from, but that was a rumor in the ether a little bit. But he's a brilliant football coach. He's the guy that talked himself into a job as Nick Saban's defensive coordinator. The man knows football. He knows how to scheme, and he has been in that environment. He came to Ole Miss in, when was it, 2022 or 2023, and looked around and said, "You are not doing enough recruiting right now as far as what's going on. We do not have the apparatus set up to be exactly what we need to be to get higher level quality players," and kind of brought in that Alabama system into Ole Miss. Now, Ole Miss has one of the better player personnel departments in the entire SEC. A lot of that is on Pete Golding. Now, is there going to be growing pains? Yeah, there probably absolutely is. But the benefit for Ole Miss fans is you're probably not going to go for a 4th and 12 on your own 25-yard line up by 10 points. You're probably not going to do that anymore. But there is going to be some growing pains. But if anybody can figure this out, it is that guy. He is going to be beloved by his fan base. He is going to fight for the fans, which they need right now because of the last 4 weeks that have gone on. And I think they're going to be prepared and play pretty well in the college football playoff from the jump. I think this is a good hire, and it has a very high ceiling.
You mentioned the system they have set up there. How much does losing, because we've heard really good things about Billy Glasscock and what he's done there as the GM at Ole Miss. How much does losing him and the other pieces going to LSU? It sounds like Charlie Weiss Jr. is leaving. What do you make of the other pieces that left with Lane?
Yeah, they're not 100% sure that Weiss is leaving. It looks like they're going back and forth and kind of comparing the jobs, and it might be at least back for the playoffs. Ole Miss is likely going to lose Billy Glasscock, but the rumor is, strong rumor, Austin Thomas is going to come back up the road. It's going to be a straight trade at GM, essentially, if that happens. It's going to work. There are guys that are Lane guys. There are guys that are Pete guys. You know how a locker room is. I mean, it's not just one single organism. It's a whole bunch of individual things. I think Ole Miss is in as good of a position as they could be in after being put through this, if that makes sense.
I think there's a lot of pressure on Pete now, Stephen, just from a standpoint of we can't even give him the benefit of the doubt to start next year. I think so much is going to be measured on how this team performs in the playoff. And the problem will become if this team struggles on offense and they can't score points, I think it's going to, I mean, and granted, they'll have all offseason to decide, hey, let's go pay for the biggest name OC out there or whatever. But I just feel like it's a little unfair to do that to Pete. But I feel like he's going to have that pressure based on how this team performs in a playoff.
Yeah, even if Charlie Weis does not go back up to Oxford, that means Joe Judge is going to be the offensive coordinator at that point. He's going to be calling plays during the game. I do agree that the hire for 2026 and beyond, that's where the rubber meets the road on this hire, because the one thing that can derail a defensive head coach coming in is the offensive coordinator. You have to nail that hire. If you don't, it can look like, honestly, LSU's offense did this year, to where the plays are the same that Mike Denbrock ran, but it's not the same offense. They're not doing the same thing because there's a feel factor to it. There's a couple of names that are interested, and Ole Miss might be interested, and they're obviously going to kick the tires in some of the biggest names out there because everybody knows that they'll pay now. But you're right. When it comes to 2026 and beyond, they have to nail the OC hire.
One more thing on the Golding thing. Do you think, I mean, look, we agree that the move's made and it's done, but would it have been better for them to say Pete is the interim and we're going to start a national search and at least go through the process of vetting some other candidates out there to see if there is somebody that might have been better?
Well, the dirty little secret is 3 weeks ago they started vetting candidates and came to Pete. It just happened behind the scenes because there wasn't an opening in Oxford. And you saw when the dominoes started falling, it was like bam, 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 bam. And the last one was Pete Golding. They obviously thought pretty highly of everything that was going on because of the relationships. The one thing that everybody needs to realize about Lane is he is a figurehead type coach. It's like the Ed Orgeron in 2019 type deal. Pete Golding is the guy that had the relationships in the halls with the players and doing that. He is the guy that has the relationships in order to galvanize and pull that team together. And Lane, for better or for worse, he's really good at calling shot plays, and he is an excellent offensive mind, one of the best that we have seen in my lifetime. But when it comes down to the minutia and the interacting with people and all of the stuff that can be weird about a head coach, he can fall behind. That's one of the reasons he struggles to recruit. Maybe once he gets to LSU, that uniform being able to recruit itself will be a benefit. Yeah. But at Ole Miss, when you actually had to put in the work, it could be problematic. Pete Golding's not going to have that problem. Like I said, he brought in the player personnel situation, and he is an excellent, excellent recruiter. So is Ole Miss going to drop down? Well, everybody thought Ole Miss was going to drop down this year. Next year is a little bit harder schedule with them going to 9 conference games. I don't know, but I'm optimistic as an Ole Miss fan of what's going on. It's one of those things that it would have been really easy for Ole Miss to screw this up. And it appears to this point, they absolutely did not do that. And that's the best that is making the best out of this horrible situation and move forward from there.
Yeah, I think with the schedule being tougher next year, I think the worst he can go is 7-5, 8-4 maybe. I think everybody will look and go, okay, they're going to be fine. If they're 6-6 or worse, I think the panic buttons are hitting like, oh God, we're back in the Matt Luke days. But I don't think that'll happen. But I think 7-5 is maybe the worst he can go next year.
Yeah, if they get the waiver for Trinidad, I think it will change a little bit.
No chance you think Trinidad joins Lane and Baton Rouge?
Not after what I was told today. No.
Okay. Any other key players you think go join him?
Potentially somebody I would worry, but Kewan Lacey. Honestly, Lane's been recruiting him for the last several weeks. If you look at post game, you find him on the field. So yeah, that's probably
on McAfee show had him with him.
Yeah. So he's obviously recruiting and doing that. So, but like I said, he's a good player. That doesn't necessarily mean he's going to go, but Lane's apparently going to try. Heck, his devotional tweet from this morning had a Trinidad flag in it, so he's going to at least try there too.
Well, I was going to say, running back's the one position LSU doesn't need. They need a quarterback. So, whether it's Austin Simmons or somebody, he needs to get in that portal quick. He is Stephen Willis. Last thing, Stephen, say something nice about Lane Kiffin.
No.
Stephen Willis, Locked On Ole Miss. Thanks for the time, man.
You too, man. Take care.
All right, that's going to do it for this edition of Locked On SEC. Our thanks to Stephen Willis for joining us. Thank you guys for making Locked On SEC your go-to podcast and helping make the Locked On Podcast Network the #1 sports podcast network out there. And a reminder, you can check us out on the Gulf Coast Sports and Entertainment Network if you live in Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama. Catch us weekdays at 11:30 a.m. Central right there on Gulf Coast Sports Entertainment Network, home of the Pelicans and home of Locked On SEC.